What if one of the most tragic female figures in the history of Algiers never actually existed? Her name is Zaphira, sometimes spelled Zaphira, and she's often called the Princess of Algiers. She was supposedly the wife of a murdered ruler, a woman desired by the infamous pirate Barbarossa, a symbol of resistance, a martyr, and possibly a complete historical invention. Today we're going to dive into the legend, the history, and the potential lie behind the enigmatic Queen Zaphira. This story is a tangled web of power, betrayal, and a woman who may have been erased from history, or perhaps written into it for a very specific reason. To understand Zaphira, we have to go back to the early 16th century. Algiers at this time is a city living under a constant threat. The powerful Spanish Empire, led by Ferdinand the Catholic, is expanding its influence across North Africa. In 1510, a man named Selim al-Toumi becomes the ruler of Algiers, but his position is precarious. The Spanish have established a fortress right on an islet in the Bay of Algiers, effectively blockading the port and choking the city. Facing this existential danger, Selim makes a fateful decision. He calls for help, and the help he summons comes in the form of two of the most famous Ottoman corsairs in history, the brothers Aroudj and Al-Din Barbarossa. These brothers were renowned for their naval prowess and their successful campaigns against the Spanish. They arrive in Algiers as saviors, protectors, but as we'll see, their ambition extends far beyond just defending the city. It is in this explosive, high-stakes context of war, politics, and shifting allegiances that the name Zaphira first appears in the historical record, or rather, in a specific historical account. So, who exactly was this Zaphira? The most detailed and influential description of her comes from a French diplomat and writer named Algiers de Tassi, in his 1725 book, A History of the Kingdom of Algiers. According to Tassi, Zaphira was a noblewoman from the fertile Mitidja plain surrounding Algiers. She was the respected wife of the city's ruler, Selim al-Toumi, and the mother of his young heir. Tassi paints a portrait of a woman of immense beauty, dignity, and education. She is not just a queen consort, she is a political player, a person of substance and influence. But here's the major problem, the one that casts a giant shadow over her entire story. Before Algiers de Tassi's book in the 18th century, there is not a single mention of her. No local Algerian chronicles, no Ottoman records, no contemporary Maghrebi sources, nothing. For the first 200 years after her supposed death, Zaphira is completely absent from the historical narrative. This silence is deafening and raises a critical question. Was she real, or was she an 18th century European invention? Let's stick with the legend for now because it's a gripping one. The story goes that Aroudj Barbarossa and his brother successfully drive the Spanish from their fortress. They are hailed as heroes, but Aroudj's ambitions quickly become clear. He doesn't just want to be Algiers' protector, he wants to be its master. In a brutal power grab, he turns on his host. Selim al-Toumi, the very man who invited him into the city, is assassinated. The traditional story, popularized by Tassi, is that he was strangled in his bathhouse. With the ruler dead, his young son flees to the Spanish-held city of Oran to seek refuge. Aroudj Barbarossa seizes the throne of Algiers for himself. And in the palace, a key figure remains, the widowed Queen Zaphira. She is now effectively a political prisoner in her own home, at the mercy of the man who murdered her husband. Aroudj, seeking to solidify his rule, sees an opportunity. Marrying the widow of the previous, legitimate ruler would be a powerful move. It would lend his new regime an air of continuity and legitimacy. It could help win over the local population, who might be loyal to Selim's memory. So, he decides he will marry Zaphira, whether she wants to or not. This is where the story shifts from a political thriller to a personal tragedy. According to the legend, Zaphira is horrified by the proposal. She refuses to marry the man who killed her husband and usurped his throne. She is a woman of honor, and she declares she would rather die than betray her husband's memory. She pleads with Aroudj to let her and her attendants leave Algiers and live a quiet life in exile. But Aroudj is relentless. He sees her not as a person, but as a political pawn. He tries persuasion, then manipulation. He allegedly stages a sham trial, accusing her of conspiring against him, hoping to break her will. He presents her with a stark ultimatum: marry him or face the consequences. The story culminates in a dramatic and violent confrontation. Aroudj, enraged by her defiance, attempts to assault her. In this desperate moment, Zaphira fights back. She pulls out a hidden dagger and tries to kill him, but fails. Realizing all is lost and determined to protect her honor, she takes her own life, swallowing poison she had concealed in her ring. It's a powerful, dignified death, the ultimate act of resistance against a tyrant. A perfect ending for a tragic heroine. But is it too perfect? Is this narrative more of a romanticized European fantasy than a North African reality? The doubts about Zaphira's existence began to surface not long after her story was first published. Joseph Morgan, a British consul in Algiers who wrote his own history in 1731, noted that the story of Zaphira was completely unheard of in Algiers itself. The very people who were supposed to have witnessed these events had no memory or record of them. In the 19th century, the historian Henri de Gramont-Leclerc analyzed the supposed letters exchanged between Zaphira and her son published in Tassi's account. He concluded they were written in a style that was distinctively French and had all the hallmarks of a literary creation, not authentic 16th century Algerian correspondence. And as we mentioned, the biggest piece of evidence against her existence is the total lack of corroboration. No Ottoman records of the conquest of Algiers mention her. No Algerian chroniclers, who meticulously recorded the reigns of rulers, ever wrote down her name. The modern historical consensus is clear. Zaphira was almost certainly a fictional character, a literary creation from the mind of an 18th century European writer. So if she wasn't real, why was this legend created? The answer lies in the European mindset of the 18th century. There was a deep fascination with the Orient, a term they used for the Middle East and North Africa. This fascination was often a mix of fantasy, romance, and prejudice. The story of Zaphira fits perfectly into popular European tropes: the tragic, noble woman, the virtuous wife, and the barbaric despot in the form of Barbarossa. It created a simple morality play of good versus evil, civilization versus barbarism, with a European audience as the intended judge. Furthermore, this myth served a political purpose. By portraying the founder of Ottoman Algiers, Aroudj Barbarossa, as a brutal, illegitimate tyrant who came to power through murder and sexual violence, it delegitimized the very foundation of the Regency of Algiers. This narrative was particularly useful during the period of French colonial expansion, as it helped to frame their conquest of Algiers not as an invasion, but as a liberation from a supposedly illegitimate and tyrannical rule that had begun centuries earlier with Zaphira's tragic fate. It was a powerful piece of colonial myth-making. But here's the fascinating twist. Even if Zaphira never lived, her story has taken on a life of its own. It inspired plays in the 18th century, novels, and most recently, the stunning 2023 film The Last Queen. In a strange way, this fictional character has been reclaimed and transformed into a national symbol in modern Algeria. She has become an icon of female resistance, a figure representing defiance against foreign invaders and the defense of national honor. For many, whether she was historically real is less important than what she represents today, the strength and sacrifice of Algerian women throughout history. In the end, Zaphira may be a myth. The historical evidence strongly suggests she's a ghost, a character born from a European pen. But her legend tells us something profound about how history is written, how memory is constructed, and how certain voices, especially those of women, are often erased from the official record, only to be written back in, sometimes as fiction. This story forces us to ask whether a historical lie can eventually become a cultural truth. And sometimes, the legends we tell reveal more about ourselves, our fears, and our aspirations than the dusty archives ever could. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the past. If you're fascinated by the hidden stories of history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was Zaphira real, or does it even matter? See you next time.